Hey guys, welcome back to Master Gaming Studios. I'm Craig, and today we have the best list of July. Once again, as we do towards the beginning of every month, we look back at the previous one, see how the tournament results were for the Tyranids, and we kind of pick and choose the best lists from each detachment and show them off in today's video. Now, for today's video, we only have 3 detachments featured. We have Vanguard Onslaught, Invasion Fleet, and Subterranean Assault. All the other detachments did not have any great performances that we could find. And if they did have some performances, like I said, they weren't great. It seems like most people are probably, at least in the last month, have been trying out Subterranean Swarm because that had seen a substantial increase in players compared to all the other detachments. And Invasion Fleet saw a bit of a decrease compared to average. So obviously people like Subterranean Assault. They're really trying it out, and that's kind of taking away from the other detachments. So we'll just dive into today's videos. Before we do, just want to thank all of you who like, subscribe, stay up to date on all of our videos here at Maelstrom Gaming Studios, as well as you members. You guys really help us do what we do. Allow us to keep going really without worrying about ad revenue and everything like that. So with all that, check out the links down below. You'll probably find something good there. And let's dive into today's video. So let's start it off as we always do with Vanguard Onslaught, and today we have Carl, Taika, I don't know. I'm sorry, I'm so bad with names. So let's start this off with Carl Takaya. He went second at the Brave New Hive World GT. 5-0, 76 players. His opponents were Tau, Space Marines, World Eaters, Orcs, and Death Guard. Great congratulations on the Death Guard win. That is a really tough matchup, especially in Vanguard Onslaught when you just have mass infantry like that. His list, a little unique take on the Vanguard Onslaught, especially with Hyper Adaptive Raveners in. He had 3 Broodlords, Death Leaper, a Winged Hive Tyrant, Winged Tyranid Prime, 3 units of Hyper Adaptive Raveners, 1 with Stalker, and he had in the rest of the list, no battle line, 3 units of 5 Gene Stealers, Lictors, Neural Lictor, 3x5 Raveners, and a unit of 6 Melee Warriors. So interesting take, as he is only rocking 3 units of 5 Stealers. He opted for that unit of Melee Warriors instead of bulking out those, which makes sense when you think about it, because the Gene Stealers are really there for early game scoring, screening, trading, stuff like that. They're not designed to last that long, and the Broodlords are really the one doing the damage. So I'm assuming all 3 of these Stealers kind of started towards each objective in No Man's Land, maybe 2 towards the center, 1 towards the expansion objective, and with the scout move and the advance and charge, they're really up there to just kind of stall and trade with your opponent. Again, not expecting to last a while. The big thing is the 3 units of Hyper Adaptive Raveners. I'm guessing it's matchup dependent whether he puts them on the table or puts them in strategic reserve or regular reserve because they have deep strike, and goes for that rapid ingress with them. My guess is maybe you rapid ingress 1 to 2 of them and you keep 1 on the board for just that sheer threat, because remember, advance and charge in this detachment with a 10-inch move, these guys will get where they need to go, and you don't necessarily need to rapid ingress them. But Raveners, especially the 10-man blocks, do take up a lot of board space, so it probably is very advantageous to rapid ingress a few of those so that you don't have them all crammed in a corner or something hiding from the scary shooting. Otherwise, I'm sure the Melee Warriors just followed it up, being that turn 4-5 threat that can just go in and kill anything they need to. They are fast in this detachment. Lictors be doing Lictor things, and the Winged Hive Tyrant is there for strategic support. So congratulations on the 5-0. Really nice to see it, and I figured it was only a matter of time before we saw 30 Raveners hit the field in Vanguard Onslaught. Alright, so now we have our first of Invasion Fleet. This is Chidwan, 6th at the Welcome Mr. New Iberian Goblin. I think this is a Spanish circuit, these Iberian ones. Actually, yes, it is. because the Iberian Peninsula is technically Spain. I guess it could be Portugal. 32 players, 4-1. He went against Blood Angels and lost the first round, but submarined his way right up to 4-1 against Dark Angels, Chaos Space Marines, Custodes, and Eldar. His characters, he's got a Hive Tyrant as the Warlord with Adaptive Biology, pretty straightforward, and a unit of Hyper-Adaptive Raveners. Battle line, he's going to block out the sky with 30 Gargoyles here, 3x10 of course. They're great, and the ability to have, when you have 30 of them, that you can bring 2 squads of them if they're in synapse range, regen those ones with the strat, the Endless Multitude strat, or Endless Storm, is pretty powerful. The rest of the list consists of pretty typical stuff for Invasion Fleet. You got a Biovore, 2 Exocrines, 2 Harusfexes, a Maliceptor, a Neurolictor, Raveners to go with the Hyper-Adapted Raveners, and 2 Tyrannofexes with Rupture Cannons. So again, this list is not out of the wild of what we've been seeing, but it is a kind of a proof of concept that things can go well when you just slap Hyper-Adapted Raveners into Invasion Fleet. Again, the ability to give them sustain and lethal and crit on 5s allows them to go into tank armies like Knights, though we didn't have to play any of those very successfully. The Gargoyles are great for just screening and stalling. Harusfexes, I have a love-hate relationship with those, as most of you probably do, as they are just so cheap, it's hard not to include them as just a giant bullet sponge, which is probably what they're going to do. I'm sure the number of times they really made it to melee were minimal. But beyond that, you've got the Rupture Cannons and the Exocrines to hold down the fort, and that Maliceptor probably working somewhat with the Hive Tyrant. Maybe not, but the Maliceptor, a nice bulky unit to hold the center of the table. So all in all, great list. I have yet to try out the 30 Gargoyles, I think. Have I? Maybe I've tried it. It's been a while. It has been. I had done 30 Gargoyles, but not recently. All in all, still, really like the list, and I'm looking forward to trying Hyper-Adapted Raveners in my Invasion Fleet list here soon. We have another Invasion Fleet list. This one is a bit different. A unique one that I was interested to cover here. So this was Patrick Schmidt. He went second at the Weekend Wars 7, the WCW qualifier event. 43 players, 4-1. He went up against Demons, lost to Tyranids, World Eaters, Chaos Demons again, and Chaos Knights. So he went up against a lot of big punchy stuff. The characters in the detachment, he had Swarmlord as the Warlord, of course, the Hive Tyrant for Adaptive Biology, and again, Hyper-Adapted Raveners with the perfectly adapted enhancement. Now, this isn't that good on Hyper-Adapted Raveners. I always question when I see this enhancement pop up for something like this, because I assume people are playing it as you can re-roll the charge roll, and rules as written, I don't believe you are allowed to, because it says the model, and technically the model's not re-rolling a charge, the unit is re-rolling a charge. So you couldn't just give them a free re-roll charge once per turn with that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm 99% sure that's how it's written, but GW also has never clarified it. Either way, Dual Tyrant in Invasion Fleet is something we haven't seen in a while. Typically that has stayed to Synaptic Nexus and Assimilation Swarm, but Dual Tyrant is fun to see now that Tyrants are a bit cheaper. He also in the battle line has 40 Hormagaunts, 1 big block of 20, and 2 blocks of 10. 2 blocks of 10 and 1 big block of 20. These are interesting as they can do really well into things like Chaos Demons and Chaos Knights if they can trigger the lethal hits. Just the sheer amount of attacks they get, triggering lethal hits and triggering them on 5s leads to 20 wounds onto the big stuff. At AP -1, again, against Demons and Knights, that's pretty dang good. He does not have any Psychophages, so he can't tune that up even higher, but still, very powerful little thing there that work against the right opponents, which is why you see them sometimes, but I think a vast majority of players have something to deal with this many Hormagaunts. Still, very nice to see them do well. The rest of the list, we got a Biovore, 2 Lictors, the Raveners to go with the Hyper-Adapted Raveners, 2 Exocrines, 2 Maleceptors, and 1 Tyrannofix with Rupture Cannon. So again, he's got a good fire support here as well to accompany his stuff. His Hive Tyrant can stay in the back and provide lethal hits if he has chosen sustained hits against his opponent, as well as giving the Assault Bubble. And then the Maleceptors can accompany the Swarm Lord up the battlefield and try and hold the objectives as long as possible while all of your Gaunts and stuff are just playing around in the middle. So nice list. It's good to see this many Hormagaunts and double Tyrants. Very different Invasion Fleet list. So good to see it. Congratulations. And let's move on to the next one. So now we come to Subterranean Assault. This is going to be our first one. And this is a couple of these are from a very big event. If you guys missed, the Tacoma Open was a 462 player event. This is Jeff Jew. He went second at this event, going 7-1. Outstanding. He played against Eldar, Orcs, Eldar again, Leagues of Votann, Imperial Knights, and lost in the last round to Death Guard, our nemesis of 10th edition right now. His list consists of Death Leaper, a Neuro Tyrant with Tremor Senses, the Swarm Lord for that extra CP, Manipulation, Trigon with the Trigon Prime enhancement because you have to have that in this detachment. It's just so good. Battleline, 2x10 Gargoyles. I like these. They can bank off of the whole tunnel system, do a little shoot and scoot. They can pop in 6 inches away from an opponent and then scoot 6 inches, so they can basically effectively deep strike an inch away, really making them easy to steal objectives with. The rest of the list, he's got a Biovore. He's got 6 Hive Guard. We've talked about these a bit on the channel. Now, the ability in this detachment to get ignores cover and sustain hits and reroll ones turns Hive Guard with shock cannons to be a pretty poor unit to actually quite a threat, especially with the meta of a lot of Death Guard vehicles, a lot of Imperial Knights and Chaos Knights, and even, he fits into this, Votann vehicles are still quite prominent in some of the higher level stuff. A lot of Votann are still bringing, 5-6 vehicles, and Hive Guard do really well into a lot of those. Not so much the Hecatons, but the smaller ones, they clean them up pretty quick. Got a unit of Neurogaunts because you have 45 points left over, it seems like all the time in this detachment. A Norn Emissary to really hold an objective and use those tunnels to move around a bit. 2 units of Ravners. Interesting, I just realized he has no hyper-adaptive Ravners, so he chose to take the points out from there and just go with utility on the regular Ravners, which is not a bad go. Tyrannofex and a unit of 6 Zoanthropes. So this detachment plays as the way we've seen some variants of Subterranean Assault play out. It's a bit more cagey and a bit more shooting heavy and not as much as an all-in offense. Personally, I love the all-in offense with the detachment, but with this list, you only have the Trigon Prime and sort of the Norn Emissary to really do damage in melee. Yes, you have the Swarm Lord and Death Leaper and the Lictor and stuff, but they're not really wanting to jump into melee right away. Really, the way this is setting up is the Ravners are delivering the Hive Guard and the Tyrannofex and the Zoanthropes around the board to do damage. They've got the reroll ones and everything. They're going to be pretty consistent and just pick vehicles off one at a time. I do wonder if this struggles with some heavy infantry, sort of like what the Death Guard probably were rocking, where the mass Terminators, they just don't have the firepower to deal with it. But still, a very powerful list. The Trigon Prime can kill normal Terminators that only have 3 wounds, or even the Deathwing Knights style ones that are 4 wounds but -1 damage. They still end up killing them, but the Death Guard ones are pretty nasty and a bit of a struggle to go up against. So all in all, a very good list, very powerful list, and a nice variation on Subterranean Assault. We have one more Subterranean Assault. This is Scott Morris from the Leeds 40k Super Major. It had 286 players. He went 6-1. He played against Dark Angels, Leagues of Votann, Space Marines, Gene Stealer Cult, Space Marines again, Chaos Knights, and Space Marines again with the loss there. His characters, he had a hyper-adaptive Ravner squad, he had the Swarm Lord as the Warlord, and of course the Trigon as a prime enhancement. Again, you gotta bring one of these things, they hit so dang hard. The battle line, he actually had a bit more battle line in a way. 2 units of 10 gargoyles, and a unit of hormagaunts to run around on the board. We've already mentioned why the gargoyles are good in this detachment, their ability to get really close to your opponent on the deep strike. Hormagaunts can do very similar, but just, they start on the board, and they'll have their advance and charge, and they'll go steal an objective mid to late game or early game, whenever they need to, they can do that. The rest of the list consists of 2 Exocrines, a unit of Hive Guard, a Lictor, 2 units of Raveners, and 2 Tyranofexes with Rupture Cannons. So again, this is playing very similar, where you don't really have a ton of melee presence. You just have the hyper-adapted Raveners, the Trigon, and the Swarm Lord also will play melee, but not immediately. The real stuff comes from the shooting. You've got all of these tunnels you're creating to teleport the Exocrines, the Hive Guard, and that Tyranofexes around the board to do damage. The nice thing with teleporting units like this through the tunnels is that it allows you to get niche angles that you wouldn't necessarily, or your opponent would not plan on you getting. Being able to deep strike really close, pop up those units. Hive Guard, you can pop them on an objective right away and hit some weird angle that your opponent was not able to. The Exocrines and Tyranofexes, again, being able to have reroll ones already so they don't need the buffs from themselves, allows them to move around the board, get those rerolls, and be pretty consistent while operating on their own, and you don't necessarily need them to all focus fire the same target to do the best they can. So really good list seeing it here from Subterranean Assault. I'm glad to see this attachment doing well. It is probably one of my favorite ones. I'm still trying out various lists of it, but it is nice to see. It's a shame that it leads to be the shooty variants of this list are the ones doing the best, which makes sense. 40k in general is more beneficial, at least right now, to a shooting army, especially for Tyranids. So it makes sense that these kinds of detachments or lists are doing well with this detachment. And we do have one more Subterranean Assault list for you guys. This was REC, 4th at the Ironweld Summer Assault ITC Major. 73 players, and he went 4-1. He played against Thousand Suns, Dark Angels, Chaos Demons, Death Guard, and Death Watch. So his list, again, similar to what we've been seeing. We've got a Swarm Lord in there. We've got a Hyper-Adapted Ravener squad. We've got the Neuro Tyrant. And we've got the Trigon Prime, the wonderful, wonderful Trigon Prime. Battle line, 10 Gargoyles this time. And the rest of the list, we've got a Biovore, a Lictor, a Neurolictor, 2 units of Raveners, a unit of 6 Zoanthropes, 2 Harusfexes, a Norn Emissary, and a Psychophage. So this is more along the lines of what I have been playing lately, a little bit more melee focused with the Harusfexes and the Psychophage. The Harusfexes lack in other detachments from 2 main things, that is, 3 main things, low EP, low speed, and no way to get any rerolls. Their consistency is done through the sheer amount of attacks they have. But this detachment with the Psychophage fixes all 3 of those things. Now you can get those Harusfexes right up in front of your opponent to get a 6-inch charge. They will be AP2 if the Psychophage has tagged what they are going after. And they have their reroll ones built in, meaning their huge plethora of attacks is going to be much more consistent in this detachment. So I really like the Harusfexes in this detachment. Yes, some opponents they will struggle against, but I think a vast majority with the buffs from this detachment, they're pretty good. Norn Emissary we have talked about, as it can move around the battlefield through the tunnels. It can play a little aggressive, pull back, or play defensive and then pull forward once it seems like the flank is secure. So good there. I do like the combination of the Neurolictor with the Zoanthropes. It's tricky to pull off, but if the Neurolictor can battle shock a key target, then the Zoanthropes can pop in and absolutely obliterate something, because they will be hitting on 2s and most likely wounding on 2s, 3s at worst, against any of the opponents with the Neurolictor bubble. All in all, a very powerful list. Congratulations. And I believe that is the last one we have to do. Yes, that is it. So that's it for this. We had 6 lists this week. Again, just 3 detachments. I'm glad to see Vanguard Onslaught doing well. I figured that would be one as Hyper-Adaptive Raveners come out. are going to be more and more popular, and Subterranean Assault is the new hotness, so I like to see people gravitating towards that. And Invasion Fleet is always Invasion Fleet. So my next stuff I'm curious about is, right now, between Invasion Fleet being really good against Knights, Subterranean Assault potentially being okay against Knights, depending on your loadout, it can be pretty good. The rest of the detachments are struggling, whether the players just don't want to play them or they're just not as good. Maybe once Chaos Knights, Chaos or Death Guard, and Imperial Knights get toned down a little bit, you see them less important in the meta. They'll still be important, but no one is going to go to a big event saying, yeah, I'm probably going to play Knights once or twice, and Death Guard. Without those maybe affecting the matchup as much, I'm curious to see if the other detachments start to pop back up. I personally have been playing with Assimilation Swarm with the new Raveners, and it is amazing. So we'll see how it goes. But let me know what you guys think of these lists. Any one of them stick out to you? You're going to try any of them? I really like the Subterranean Assault ones. I'm a melee player at heart, so seeing all these shooty Subterranean Assault lists hurts my soul a little bit. But hey, I'm not going to take it away from anybody for playing what are our better data sheets in our better detachment to come out with some really powerful lists. So congratulations again to you guys. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time here at Maelstrom Game Studios.